Welcome to Significance Breeds Success. My name is Daniel Puder. Today I have Marc Kramer. He is the president of Stress Free Family Business. He's in the media industry. He's a rock star. He's a host. And we were just talking for a few minutes about wrestling, MMA, boxing, Pennsylvania. So thanks for coming on today. I appreciate your time. I'm excited to hear from your wisdom. And I love the sign right behind you, Best Business Minds. So why did you come up with the name Best Business Minds?
Well, that's a show that I run every Tuesday and Friday where I interview business book authors. And how I came up with that was right as COVID hit, I was getting emails from entrepreneurs saying, what am I going to do? I'm bored. My clients have put me on hold. And so I run the Private Investors Forum, which brings together angel investors and entrepreneurs. So I thought just to keep them focused on how to improve their business during this downtime, I would interview business book authors because I write a national column for American City Business Journals. And so I asked a friend of mine who was a professor at Harvard, wrote a book called, what was the book called? It's a book on resiliency. And so I said, hey, Laura, her name's Laura, Dr. Laura Hung. And I said, Laura, I want to do this show. Would you like to be my guest? And she said, what do you want to do? And I said, tomorrow at noon. And this was on a Thursday, and I was doing her on a Friday. And she said, okay, but will anybody show up? Well, I just put out a quick email, and within an hour or 2 hours, we had 70 people sign up. And by the time she went on, we had over 150. And then people were asking me, am I going to do this again? So I kept doing it. Now I've done 25 shows. And I've had John Chambers, the former chairman and CEO of Cisco Systems, talk about his book, and Tim Draper, famous venture capitalist, talk about his book. And now publishers are sending me books and trying to book people on this show. And I average about 125 to 150 people that sign up to listen to the show.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Oh, thanks. It's fun. And it forces me to read 2 new business books a week.
Wow. So
yeah.
Do you find, so I made top 100 podcasts at one point, and people were sending me books and, emails. And I was like, I want to be able to pick and choose. I don't want people to solicit me, to be honest. I want to be able to find people myself, because that's what, at least for me, that's what it's about. It's not I want to be able to pick people like you that are impacting people in the world. What was why did you really want to help business entrepreneurs in the beginning? Were you finding a problem that they didn't have the right wisdom or, insight or, mentorship?
Well, I came from a family of business owners. So I distinguish between business owners and entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs to me are people who are scale up a business, and people who are business owners were like my dad, who was a shopkeeper, had one business. So I'm a serial entrepreneur, and I was always intellectually interested in hearing other entrepreneurs talk about their businesses. And so I started the country's first formally organized investor angel group back in 1990. And so over time, I've just loved working with entrepreneurs. I've done 25 of my own startups. I've written 6 books on these topics. And I write, as I mentioned, a national column for it. So I like the idea of running events that entrepreneurs walk away with new information that will enhance their chances of success and make America the great country that it's been for 250 years. I mean, I think our competitive differentiator is entrepreneurship. And so I think that's important. And of course, on my show, I actually get people from other countries that listen in, which surprised me. So I think entrepreneurship is the one thing that solves the world's problems in terms of employing people and keeping people out of poverty. So I think it keeps people engaged, keeps them out of poverty, and creates wealth and excitement.
I love that. What would be 3 tips to entrepreneurs that you've learned, like the biggest 3 things that can add value to their life when they start a business?
So if they've already come up with the idea, I would say three things are: hire people smarter than you, find a good mentor who has a lot of real world experience, not an executive coach who got a certification, but somebody who's been there, done that, and has bled on the battlefield. And the third thing I would say to them is be humble, be willing to listen to other people, no matter who they are. Because I've had ideas that have come from maintenance people, people who are secretaries, people from all aspects of the business. And some of those ideas have been way better than the MBA students that I taught at Wharton. And so a good idea can come from anywhere, and you just have to be humble enough to listen to it.
I like the humble. Do you find that a lot of people, when they start a business, they're so excited about their business that they get caught up in the moment, they get caught up in that time period to really go after it versus building a foundation of super smart people around them, having good people to give them advice, those three things? Do you think, because I find a lot of them are going forward, but they don't build a good enough foundation to be able to expand?
Well, I think two things. One is it's really good to just jump in there and get started, because a lot of people, as you know, just talk about it and they never launch. So it's good that they get started, but immediately they need to be reflective and think about what kinds of people do I need if I really want this to succeed, because there's no way that I can do it all. And I need to surround myself with people who are going to tell me the truth and get things done. So I tend to stay away from hiring people who have come from large corporations unless I see that they're really entrepreneurial in those corporations. I like people who've worked for startups that nobody's ever heard of before and help make them successful.
So how do you find, obviously you network a lot. So you're out there, you're meeting people. So I find that a lot of, even for my companies, we have a system to be able to employ people. And what I would rather do than put an ad out there on an ad site and go through 100 resumes to find one person is what our numbers are, I'd rather get a referral from somebody. Like my buddy Dan last week, he texted me, he goes, here's somebody's contact. Would you be interested in hiring? Do you need to hire somebody? I'm like, sure. My challenge is even his level compared to my level, is more of like somebody burnt out in the industry that worked for in a big corporation. And it was interesting to be able to see the difference on who we hire, the context of how people show up. It's a different context, like what you're talking about, of people that maybe strive for more, they're entrepreneurial, they like to build. How do you find those people, and where do you go to find those?
Well, I agree with you in the sense of that the best people to get are when your own employees help you recruit people from outside. You running an ad is a lot of wasted time. But if your lawyer and your accountant and your insurance broker all know about you, what kind of person you are, what kind of people you're looking for, they're great recruiters. Your own employees are great recruiters. All your friends that you deal with who know what kind of person you are, they kind of are a good screening source to determine who should speak. So I have a friend of mine who runs a marketing firm that focuses in the pharmaceutical area. And I sent him 3 people because he had sent me an email and said, do you come across anybody? So he knew that I had him as a client. We became friends. I knew him. I knew his culture. I knew what he was looking for. So I said, I got 3 people I think would be a really good fit for your culture and have your work ethic. So I think that's a good way to go. But let's face it, when you start to get to a size of 100 or more people, it's very difficult to go and do that. And I think you find yourself when you're hiring people and you're looking for certain positions, even if their resume looks good and you meet them, you're like, sometimes you're very underwhelmed by that person. And it takes a lot of different people to interview before you find the right person that you think is a fit for you, that you're willing to trust every day with that particular task in the business.
So I was teaching over at Nova Southeastern. That's how I met Jake, through one of the students in my class. And what I was finding was there were so a lot of the I created an emotional and belief intelligence training course, which we then turned into a college class. It was 3 credits. And what I was finding is students did not have emotional and or belief intelligence.
Yeah.
And they didn't have the right life skills. They didn't have a resume a lot of the time. They didn't have a LinkedIn. They weren't professional. They weren't thinking what's going to happen in the next 5 years. They were thinking, oh, I'm going to go party with my friends now.
Right.
And so over this time period of starting a 6th through 12th grade school district, private school district, and so about 2 years ago, I'm thinking to myself, okay, the problem you just said, 100 employees, how do you find the next, 1,000 of them, right? Like to grow.
Yeah, sure.
So I came up with a solution, start my own university.
That's good.
So it's interesting. We're going to be filing the paperwork. It's going to be a college because multiple colleges make up a university, and eventually we'll have a university. But what's interesting is to start a debt-free college that's private and that's for-profit is not done. And we came up with a apprenticeship program for business because education is business. Being a doctor is business. Being a politician is business.
Anything people pay you for is a business.
Everything is a business. But what people don't think right now in education is a business. And so educators don't understand that, if they went out and started their own school, they could make double the amount if they with half the class size. So we looked at this and I'm like, how do I take care of my employees? But how do I build, because I can't find enough educators that are willing to be vulnerable or open or connected to kids. It's very like, I'm going to tell you to do an assignment and you go do it. So we've been building this. What do you think, and how do you think education at the university level is going to affect, because businesses can't find employees, too much employee turnover issues, right? What can employees do, or what can businesses do maybe in the future to be connected to, a mentor program on university campuses, or what can students do in college to be able to make sure they get a job offered versus applying for a job?
Well, I have to say that, and I only taught at business schools, and I've taught at 7 schools. I was 10 years at the Wharton School teaching MBAs and executive MBAs. And I've taught in the Philadelphia area, I've taught at most of the schools, entrepreneurship and family business. And I think, and just speaking from the business school, because we're talking about business, they need to hire more people who have real world experience. A lot of the professors have been so removed from the business world that they're teaching stuff that happened 20 years ago. When I was teaching entrepreneurship at one of the schools, the students, I would sell out my class because the students would hear that I would bring in real world speakers. I was a practicing entrepreneur. I was telling them the way it is. And they were saying, wait a minute, when you're telling this, and the speakers are telling us, so totally different than what the faculty are telling us. And I said, well, I think the business schools need to change and make all the faculty be practicing what they're teaching. They need to be actually doing it so that way the kids are getting the best. And a lot of times the faculty are lazy. Like I like to bring in a speaker a week, and they were saying, oh, well, that's being lazy that you want to bring in a speaker a week because then you're not teaching. And I would say to them, okay, it's a lot less time consuming for me to create PowerPoint slides and teach what I know. I can do that literally in 20 minutes than it is for me to go and find speakers, good speakers to come into the class. And my students love those speakers. And I also think that a lot of time is wasted at the university for students, giving them tests and quizzes and having them read textbooks that are already out of date. So I think this is a big mistake, and it needs to be changed. And the only way it can be changed is if corporations demanded the change. If they started saying, I want to be involved in the selection of your faculty, and I want to see what they're doing to stay current. Because if they're just writing papers and they're just keeping their office hours, and if they're not involved in business itself, then what's the value to me isn't important, because then I got to do all the work to train this person. And I think also working with kids right out of college, if you have a core team of